just a word about my background, if you didn't read it. I've been in the software industry for a lot of years now. I was at Microsoft for a dozen years, and then after that I left and co-founded a venture partnership in Bellevue with Mission Partners, and been doing that for the past almost a dozen years. And all primarily software investing. I've done a few other things outside of the software realm, but primarily software. So that's kind of my background and why I may have some relevant background here. So I'll just kind of jump in and talk about my views on software industry and building software. Please interrupt. So you've seen this guy, Mark Andreessen, and I love this quote, "Software is eating the world." It's the latest way that people talk about the growth and prevalence and the impact of software on the world. And I think that's a great way to say it. Software is eating the world. It seems like there's no better time to be engaged with software than right now, because it truly is becoming pervasive in every single industry, every single product. Every business process is being turned into software. Every behavior, every object is being turned into software. The Moore's law keeps grinding away, giving us more and more effectively free compute cycles in the cloud that you can use for more and more purposes. You can also get lower cost, cheaper and cheaper, lower power, processing power embedded in damn near anything these days. So it's just a great time to be in the software business, and I don't know how you'd be in any business these days without thinking about software as a core part of your asset. It is eating the world, as Mark says. So I'm as excited as I've ever been. I mean, when I got into the software business a billion years ago, I was excited then about the impact of personal computers. But I'm even more excited now. There's just so many things to do with software, and so many tools, and so many opportunities. So I think it's a great time, and I'm glad you're all in this course and thinking about it. So when I think about building a software business and taking advantage of this, by the way, I'm using a product in the group here in town made, Haiku Deck, for doing presentations. This is way more fun than using PowerPoint. Like listed dot points and crap and forwarded deck. Just a few words and pictures, and they do a great job of sorting up all the public domain pictures. So if you don't use Haiku Deck, I recommend Haiku Deck. I wish I'd invested in those guys. So the first thing you have to think about when you're building a software company is what problem you're solving and for who. And if you're not solving a problem, you better think harder, because people don't have time for kind of wish I had that piece of software, or gee, that would be kind of nice to have. People have problems in their lives and they need solutions. And you need to identify those pain points and develop products that really address a pain point. Something that's really bothering some people and is annoying them and is something that they need to have solved. People also have really low tolerance for bad software. Software that doesn't have a great experience. So as you build your software, you really need to think about that first, literally 30-second experience. When people click on your site for the first time, 30 seconds in, they better be feeling something good and warm about you, or their abandonment rate is ferocious. There's so many options and choices for people. So you just need to have a laser-like focus on exactly what's the problem, what am I solving, and just over-focus on the problem. And that's especially important when you're starting a business. I was talking, we have an investment in a company called Splunk that went public last year. And if you go read their website now, it says all kinds of big fancy words about big data and machine-generated data and hoo-ha, et cetera. That is not how the company started. If you went and saw their first version of their website, it didn't talk about machine data and machine-generated hoo-ha. It talked about a specific set of people, line IT people, that didn't know what the hell was going on with all the processes and needed to figure out how to get across all the log files, flooding the machine, and find out exactly what the hell was going on. That was what they first came out to the market with. And it was a very specific customer and a very specific problem. And they did that. Now, of course, over time, they've had success, and they've grown and added on, and now they have a bigger story. And as they sell to enterprises, you need a bigger story. But when they started, that first day, a very focused, simple story for a very clear set of people. Sorry, I have my speaking notes here, so I have to keep referring to those, otherwise I forget what I'm saying. not only do you need to focus on the problem, but you need to focus on durable problems. I like to think about problems that are still going to need solved in 20 years from now. You can build companies that are built to flip, that you can just rev up and sell quickly, but I will tell you, the Seattle market has been the wrong place to do that. We are not the world's best people at building fast companies to flip. We're not a momentum investing marketplace. There are world experts in that, and they're all in Silicon Valley, and if that's really what you want to use your life, you should go down there and learn from the experts on momentum investing and how to flip things fast, because that is not what this market's about. And I think you need to focus on these durable problems that people have, that they'll still have in 5 years and 10 years, where you can build a long-term company serving that need and that problem. Another problem is it's got to be personal for you. You have to personally resonate with the problem. And why is that important? Well, number one, you're going to work your ass off with starting up a company, and you better really enjoy it, because you're going to be doing it like 20 plus hours a day. So if you don't resonate with it, if it doesn't thrill you and excite you, man, it's going to be a rough go. And you're going to be lapped by people that really enjoy spending time on it. You need to make incredibly fast decisions, I think, in these businesses as you build this software company out. And you need to be able to rely on your gut. And the only way your gut is any good is if you've got lots of time spent with the problem. If you've been through this problem a million times yourselves, you've made all the mistakes, you've tried all the solutions, you know what works and doesn't work. That hones your gut, and you can make great instinctual decisions. If you're trying to work on a problem that's somebody else's problem, that you don't actually have that personal identification with, that you don't personally feel anything about, your gut decisions kind of suck, because you just don't have that great personal experience that's allowed you to really make those good decisions. And again, someone else out there will have that resonance with the problem. They will be making those great, quick decisions based on their gut, and they will bypass you because they're just more focused on the problem. So for me personally, I don't understand enterprise software. I've never had to run an enterprise software organization. I've never had to manage enterprise software assets. I suck at enterprise software, and if someone comes to me and says, hey, here's a great enterprise software idea, I don't know what to do with it. I'm kind of like, yeah, I guess it's good. I'm not a CIO. I've never been one, and I don't want to be one. And I can't tell you if it's a good idea or not. I don't have the instincts there. I'm much more focused on individual developers, on consumers, on small business people with problems that I resonate with, because I've struggled with all those things myself. And so I would never personally invest in enterprise software going forward, because I think I'd be bad at it. I need things that are very personal for me, that I can care about, that I use every day. Another thing to think about is how unique is your approach, and how unique are you and your team. And it's not that you have to be unique, but I know a bunch of guys 5-6 years ago who started, and this was before the Instagram days, who started a bunch of photo sharing sites, ways to get photos off your phone and onto the cloud or wherever. I must have seen 100 companies come through our offices, literally, with different photo sharing things. And they all said, look, we're different. We have the greatest technology ever for this. And some of those guys were absolutely true. They did have some great technology. But when there's 100 startups just like you, and you're all flooding through the venture capitalist office, it becomes impossible for us to discriminate which of these is really good or bad. I mean, they also make decent teams. I can't really tell which is good or bad. It becomes impossible for customers to discriminate, because they're flooded with choices. It becomes impossible for your distribution partners to discriminate. And so if you're in one of these crowded spaces where there's a ton of things out there that are all kind of the same, it's just a very, very tough go. And I will say most of those photo startups fail. Obviously, people like Instagram ended up succeeding, and so there is the one story out of 100 of these that did well. But I'm not convinced Instagram, well, in fact, Instagram didn't have the best technology. They didn't have much technology to start, so it really wasn't a best technology play. I'm not a momentum investor, so I can't tell you why Instagram succeeded and others didn't. But I will tell you, I know that there were a lot that failed, and they could never get traction with distribution partners. They could never get traction with investors, with customers, because there were so many overlapping, similar ideas in the marketplace. So, who has your back? Who's going to be on your team? And You need a rock-solid team of founders when you're going to start with these companies, because you're going to be living and breathing with these people all the time. They're going to be with you all day long. There's going to be incredible stress on your organization, and those relationships will be tested. You're going to spend a lot of time building and managing those relationships. It's incredibly important that you spend a lot of time on your culture and how you work together and what your values are, and that it's probably worth overspending time on that before you actually sign papers to get in bed with someone on a startup, because you're going to live with whatever the consequences of that partnership are. And it's just incredibly important to have the great people within your company and your founding team. It's also incredibly important to constantly, as you build your team, hire to continue to build that culture. And the biggest mistakes I ever made were bad hire decisions in some of my companies, where you bring somebody on board and it was a terrible decision, and they're not the right person culturally, not the right person for the team. It was easy to hire them. Now it takes you 6 months to get rid of them because you feel bad about getting rid of them, and you try to give them chances over and over and over again, or maybe you have to follow some legal process to get rid of them. It's expensive. You have to hire somebody else that's different now. And you probably screwed up this person's life by bringing them on board, having them move here or something, and now you have to undo all that. So hiring the wrong people is terrible. You need to really make sure the people you hire support your culture, mesh with your team, and that they will have your back during the worst times, that they're very compatible with you. You also need to constantly hire smarter than you. You've probably heard that before, but if every person you hire should be raising the bar on the team, and it's just never worth compromising on those. I know you're desperate, you think I need a person tomorrow to go work on this problem tomorrow, but it's never worth it. You'll always regret it. So make sure you're hiring well for your team. And of course, these days, I think it's not only who has your back within your team, but you also need to think about, as you build your company, how are you relating to your customers? It's not a one-time transaction where you throw software across the wall to them, they give you money, and you never hear from them again. So many of the great startups these days are doing a great job building community and an ecosystem already from the first day as they build their software out, whether they're doing open source software and making a contribution there, so there's a ton of people invested in their success, or they're doing other ways to let customers really engage with the product and build on top of it and creating feedback mechanisms. But you really need to think hard about, how am I going to engage these customers and get them invested in my success? I want them pulling on the door as well. And open source is a great way to do that. There are other mechanisms to do that, but getting customers on your side, investing in your success, pulling for you is pretty critical, especially when you're a small company. You need help. You need support. You need people working for you. And getting the customers on board is super important. So as you think about your culture and you build it out and think about your values and hire against that, I will tell you one value that I think has to be among your value set, and that's execution. You must have a culture of execution, of getting things done, of measuring how you got it done, and feeding that back in your process, of learning from every mistake you made along the way, keeping track of those mistakes and feeding back in the process, of encouraging trial, even if it doesn't work out, but making things happen. This execution, getting things done, learning about execution must be a core value. You have to hire people that execute and get things done. You have no time as a startup to fritter away and think and idealize what you're going to do. You need to get things done. So it's critical that you hire for that and that you organize and plan for that. Another thing I'll bring up is capital. Capital, I'm a venture capitalist, I'm an investor. We are the most expensive capital in the world. You should work very hard to never take $1 from people like us. A, will take a lot of ownership in your company. B, once you take money from outside investors, you are not in charge. I don't care what the spreadsheet says about what percentage the outside investors own, but you are not in charge anymore. You are now beholden to somebody. You feel a moral obligation to give their money back to them. They will exert their rights fully, and they will do everything they can to control. They will typically, in a typical startup, you'll find that even in the best of terms, for an A round, you'll end up owning a third of the company, a third will be the option pool, maybe a third will be investors. You've already started to lose control. You can already find yourself all of a sudden on the wrong side of board decisions. So capital is hugely expensive, both in terms of liquidation, or both in terms of dilution for your own ownership, but also in terms of control and how your time is going to be spent. So do everything possible, I would encourage you, that you can, to avoid getting professional money in the firm. Get your revenue stream going. Get early revenue stream from customers. Use other mechanisms like Kickstarter, et cetera, to get capital for your company. Do everything possible you can. The only time you really want to take, I think, professional money from investors is when you've proven out your model. You know customers will give you money for it. And now you're at the point where you want to scale up your business and you want to expand an existing model that works in a substantial way. Because at that point, your model, if it's proven, the dilution you'll take will be much, much less. The amount of control you'll have will be much, much less. And that's the time to take money. But taking money too early is a mistake. The other problem with taking money too early is when you're sitting then on a big pool of money, you lose a lot of discipline. Being resource constrained and dollar constrained early in your existence is a very, very good thing, because it forces you to decide what are the few things I'm going to do in this business to succeed. So avoid early capital. It's important to be lucky. I've been super lucky in my career, and I came out to work at Microsoft at an ideal time, and it worked out super well for me. But let's be clear, you need to be lucky, but you can make decisions that make it more likely that you'll be lucky. Working in really high growth markets, picking a marketplace that's going to have a high growth rate, you'll probably be luckier there. Working with these absolutely smartest people you can work with will improve your chances of luck. But surrounding yourself with a great team that are making interesting decisions and interesting things happen makes you lucky. Making a lot of frequent small bets so that you're ready to move in any direction if something pops this way or pops that way. If you've made a lot of frequent small bets and tried things in those different directions, that enhances your luck. I don't know how many of you read Nassim Taleb's The Black Swan or His Follow-on on Fragility. Both good books, but he talks a lot in there about making small bets frequently and many whacks at the ball. You just never know when something's going to pop and be the thing that all of a sudden makes your business explode. So make the decisions that allow you to be lucky. Put yourself in position for lucky things to happen. Be open to lucky things that are going to come along. I think that's the best way to be lucky. And be very intentional. This is super important, I think, for anybody in any walk of life. But control your calendar, your time, your team, your investment. Be super intentional every single day about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Is this thing you're doing today the thing you must do to build your business? Is this thing you're doing today the thing that's going to make a difference competitively? Is it going to make a difference for this customer you want to close? Be super intentional. I see so many people that waste their days away because they are not intentional. They don't do the things first thing in the morning that are the most critical things for the business that day. So be super intentional. Of course, to be intentional, you have to know what your intention is. You need to know where you're trying to get to. So obviously, you need that goal up front. You know who that customer is that you're going after, what you're trying to do for them. But once you know that, just be incredibly super intentional and get done the things that you must get done. I just a couple more slides, and then I can talk about anything you want to talk about. You should aim high in all your businesses. And I love this quote, kind of a literary kind of thing here. And actually, this quote was used in the Pretenders song too, if you're a big Pretenders fan. But we're all lying together, but some of us are looking at the stars. You need to aim high. You need to raise yourself above the everyday mundane task and set high goals for yourselves and for your company. And, yeah, you may not achieve it all, but having that high goal is important. You know, there's a slide that maybe I put it out there. You know, you can't inspire a team or your customers with mundane goals. You need an aspirational goal for your team, for yourself, for your customers, to get them excited about your product and supporting it. And so, aim high, aim for the stars, create a great goal for yourself and for your team. So, one last idea, I think, with my last slide, and I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. One thing I do think a lot about these days, I've talked about working with smart people, that makes you lucky, you want to have great people on your team. When I think in the software business these days, where are the smart people? And there are some places I see smart people moving these days, which to me is very, very interesting. Obviously, I mean, one smart thing, I don't know how many of you have seen these Raspberry Pi devices, but these $35, little single board computers about this big, runs full Linux on it. Or the Arduinos, smaller yet, that support a whole array of sensor packages and little programmable devices. These are incredibly cheap, small computing platforms. It reminds me very, very much of the early days of the PC industry when people were coming out with the Apple II, the Apple I before that, the Altair, and all these machines that were fairly cheap for the day, had a ton of hobbyist enthusiasts around it, people doing all kinds of crazy things with them. Well, that's what's happening now with the Raspberry Pi and Arduino. They've sold 1 million of these Raspberry Pi things. People are doing all kinds of macro things with them. None of this is a great business yet, but man, there's a lot of heat and energy around these things. And that's exciting. Something good will happen here. I don't know what yet, but there's a lot of very bright people. In fact, a lot of the brightest people I know are all tinkering these things in the basement, trying to figure out what do I do with this crazy building. So if you haven't purchased one, go buy a Raspberry Pi. Related to that is, of course, massively distributed computing. I mean, people work on distributed computing, but if you've got these really cheap computers, Raspberry Pis, and imagine that they're $35 this year, imagine in 2 years they're $3.50. If I've got 10, 100, 1,000 of these, how the hell do I manage those things, program those things? What tools do I need? What management tools do I need? What applications are going to run on 1,000 machines at a time? These are interesting problems, and a lot of the smartest people I know are thinking very hard about the implications of having a massive number of machines here at disposal, and what might you do with those. Related to that is, as you start to have this massive base of machines everywhere, issues of trust and security, I think, are fascinating. You're going to increasingly not be able to fully trust all the computers that you can run code on. You're not going to trust the code that's on them. What do you do about that? We have one company we invested in called Bromium that is coming out with kind of a micro virtual machine so that you can protect any random piece of code on your computer with its own VM. That's one idea. But I think there's a wealth of things that still need to be done in the untrusted code space, and how do you think about a bunch of computing platforms when you just don't know what all is running on those things. You don't have full control, and yet you need to use those for your business, for your purposes. So I think that's a hot area that people are thinking about. Obviously, I think 3D fabrication and building hardware is fascinating. If you look at the price points on these 3D printers now, like $1,500 for a 3D printer. You may remember, you may not, that when the PC revolution started, PCs were $5,000. And that was a low enough price for a ton of people to buy and start to do things like VisiCalc and desktop publishing and all that kind of good stuff. And it started the PC revolution. And it was $5,000 a unit. We're now with these 3D printers at $1,500. They're dirt cheap, and that's today's dollars. I didn't even do the inflation adjustment. I don't know what's going to happen with those crazy things, but I suspect something good will happen. At $1,500 a unit, people will buy a lot of these things and do things with them. Let's see. Well, I think that's the end of my slides. That's where I think the smart people